Tonight, we're diving into the myth of Irene, the forgotten son of Hephaestus, a god who wasn't born on Olympus, but forged from fire and steel deep in a mortal blacksmith's forge. His mission, steal the eternal flame from the peak of Olympus and reignite humanity's dying fire. But it's not just a simple heist. He's got a three-headed underworld beast, a jealous god in winged sandals, and a storm-summoning prophet who predicts only one outcome: Arian's death. So before you get too comfy, take a sec to like and subscribe, but only if you're into mythology meets mystery stuff. And hey, tell us where you're watching from. So, what time is it for you? Sometimes our stories are better than sleep. Sometimes they just make you dream bigger. Time to kill the lights, turn on the fan for some white noise, and let's recap tonight's show. In Mycenae's flickering forge, where men shape iron with sweat and prayers, there's a woman with hands that rival the gods. Her name's Callista, a mortal blacksmith with fire in her soul and a hammer that sings when it strikes copper. She forged swords sharp enough to slice spears midair, and armor so seamless folks whispered. Ares himself once wore her breastplate into battle, the gods noticed. But only one god showed up in person: Hephaestus, the lame blacksmith god, shunned by Olympus. Quietly watching her, he wasn't drawn by beauty. Callista wasn't the perfume and palace type. She wore war paint black as ink and smelled like iron smoke and pine. But when she worked, Hephaestus saw something divine in her movements, something familiar. One night, when the moon hung low and red over Aegina, Hephaestus entered his smoky, shadowy workshop. No gifts, no sacred decrees, just his presence that night. The forge burned brighter, and 9 months later, a child was born, Arian. He didn't cry, at first, anyway. His eyes opened glowing like embers, the forge's fire roaring as if it recognized kin. The midwives gasped. One whispered, "He's been touched by the divine." Another made the sign of the cross, while the eldest muttered, "He won't stick around long." Arian grew faster than other boys. By 5, he was shaping iron. By 7, he'd forged his first blade, perfect, sharp, and strangely warm to the touch. He never played, never lied. There was a quiet stillness about him that made others uneasy. The villagers feared what they didn't understand. They called him cursed, the son of a god without a throne. Kids avoided him. Priests refused to bless him. But Callista loved him fiercely, teaching him not just how to work fire, but to respect it. She said, "Fire obeys those who listen, not those who boss it around." When Arian turned 16, his forge burned day and night, crafting weapons for cities he'd never seen and kings he'd never met. But even as metal melted under his hands, something deeper stirred inside him. He wasn't born to serve. He was born to change the world. For ages, the eternal flame was a gift stolen from the heavens, defied by Prometheus himself. Fire wasn't just for warmth, it was for thought, art, and creation. The big difference between humans and beasts. But that rebellious era was fading. Humanity forgot the debt they owed the gods, and the gods, in turn, turned their backs on humanity. It started slow. Hearths that once blazed began to dim. Forests grew colder. Storms lasted longer. Crops withered in spring. Houses breathed frost even in summer. Kids shivered beside empty chimneys. Old women muttered prayers over cold ashes. Priests warned of punishment. Scholars blamed the stars. But across villages, towns, and empires, another fear grew, not that the world was ending, not the guys calling the shots. When Arion hit 16, his forge was burning day and night, cranking out weapons for cities he'd never seen and kings he'd never met. But even as the metal melted beneath his hands, something deeper was stirring inside him. He wasn't born to serve. He was born to change the world, long ago. The eternal flame was a gift stolen from heaven, a dare from Prometheus himself to survive. Fire wasn't just for warmth, it was for thinking, art, and creation, the thing that set humans apart from animals. But that rebellious age faded away. Humanity forgot the debt they owed the gods, and the gods, well, they turned their backs on us. It started slow. Hearths that once blazed bright began to die out. Forests grew colder. Storms lasted longer. Crops withered come spring. Houses filled with frost breath, even in midsummer. Kids shivered next to empty chimneys. Old women muttered prayers over heatless ashes. Priests preached punishment. Scholars blamed the stars. But across villages, towns, and empires, a different fear took root. Not that the world was ending, but that the gods had abandoned them. And they were right. On Mount Olympus, the gods sealed away the last true flame, a spark kept only in the sacred hearth, untouched by mortal hands for centuries. No god dared share it again. They feared human rebellion, feared what Prometheus had started. They thought, let them suffer. They need to remember their place. But not all the gods agreed. In the shadowy corners of the world, whispers, no god dared share it again. They feared human rebellion, feared what Prometheus kicked off. They told themselves, let them suffer. They need to remember their place. But not all gods were on board. In the shadowy corners of the world, whispers were carried away by the wind. The gods will fight you. The world will demand your failure. The fire you seek, it's not meant for humans. It was stolen once, and the price was eternal chains. Arion stepped forward, fists clenched, walking on two legs, lighting up the city with every step, and deep inside forgotten temples. Candles about to burn out suddenly flared up again at the sound of a blacksmith's hammer on an anvil. Arion didn't know any of this. He only knew the iron was getting harder to shape. The fire in his forge needed more breath, and the warmth he once took for granted was slipping away. But the world was watching now. Gods, old and young, fell silent, eyes fixed on Mycenae, the divine hearth atop Olympus, shielded by marble and guarded by fate, flickered for the first time in ages, not in response to a god, but to a boy born from fire and sorrow, and deep inside him, something began to glow. Delphi was dying, once the heart of the divine council, where kings and warriors climbed stone paths, seeking Apollo's voice now silent. Cracked pillars overgrown, holy streams reduced to mist, but a voice still echoed, buried deep in the mountain's breath. The prophet Arion arrived in silence. No one greeted him at the gate. The torches lining the temple had long since gone out. Ivy clung to the ruined altars like desperate fingers. Unwilling to let go of lost faith, thunder rumbled above not rain, but the roar of something older watching. He descended into the empty chamber where generations before him had wept and pleaded. There, atop a crumbled stone throne, sat the prophetess. She wore a purple cloak, skin pale as ash, eyes blind but blazing in the storm. Before he could speak, she took a deep breath, like a flame dragged back into a lantern. Haion, she hissed. Though no name was spoken, he said nothing. You will climb the mountain. You will take the fire, and you will die. Her voice cracked the silence like a whip. He didn't flinch. He'd heard stories of prophets, their riddles wrapped in poetry and metaphor. But this wasn't a prophecy. It was a sentence. She slowly rose, her limbs moving like smoke caught in the wind. The gods will oppose you. The world demands your failure. The fire you seek doesn't belong to humans. It was stolen once, and the price is eternal chains. Irion stepped forward, fists clenched. Then let me pay the price. Silence stretched, then laughter not cruel, but exhausted. The sound of someone who's seen too many stories in the same way. She whispered, "You are already yourself." The room darkened. Thunder outside grew fierce. The air vibrated with something ancient, primal. Then suddenly, everything went quiet. The prophetess leaned back in her chair. Her mouth opened, but only smoke escaped. Her prophecy had come true, and though Irion left without another word, her image followed him in dreams, in flames, in every shadow cast by his forge. The gods had judged. His path was set. But even Olympus couldn't predict what a dying world would do when handed fire. Before climbing Olympus's peak, one must earn the mountain's respect. Olympus never bowed to unproven claims. Legend says its foot isn't stone or snow, but soul. Beneath its foundations lies a gate sealed by silence and guarded by the oldest fear in creation, Cerberus, Hades's hellhound. No one passes that gate. Then let me pay that price. Silence stretched out. Then laughter, not cruel but weary, the sound of someone who's seen too many stories in the same way. She whispered, "You are who you are now." The room grew dark. Thunder outside rumbled louder. The air vibrated with something ancient, primal. Then suddenly, everything went quiet. The prophet leaned back in her chair. Her mouth opened, but only smoke escaped. Her prophecy had come true, and though Irion left without a word, her image haunted him in dreams, in the flames, in every shadow cast by his forge. The gods had spoken. His path was set. But even Olympus couldn't predict what a dying world would do once handed the fire. Before climbing Olympus's peak, one must earn the mountain's respect, and Olympus never bowed to the unproven. Legend says the base isn't stone or snow, but soul. Beneath its foundation lies a gate sealed by silence and guarded by the oldest fear in creation, Cerberus, Hades' hellhound. No one passes that gate without facing death first. Irion didn't question this. He studied mythology like a blacksmith and studies heat thoroughly and exhaustingly. He knew what waited beneath Olympus's feet, but to claim eternal fire, he'd have to go down, not metaphorically, but straight to hell. So he prepared not with armor, but skill. He spent 3 days and nights forging a necklace, not for battle, but for submission, made from obsidian stone. Gerion's chest felt frost in his lungs. At first, it was light, tightening with each breath, a slow heat burning under his skin. But the higher he climbed, the deeper it bit, not like a wound, more like erosion, piece by piece, the man's body was stripped away, leaving something rough behind. Olympus's peak was no longer just a mountain, it was alive. The cliffs trembled beneath his feet, the wind howled iron, and the last glowing ember from his mother's forge. He carved 3 names into it, each representing one of Cerberus's heads, and as he worked, he muttered those words silently: memory, loyalty, sorrow. On the 4th day, he stood before that dark cave entrance, said to lead straight down forever. The wind here was cold, but didn't sting the skin. It scratched the soul instead. And the air smelled not of rot, but of forgotten prayers. He stepped deeper, deeper still. He passed faintly glowing bones in the shadows, past torches lighting themselves without flames, until he heard the sound, breaths slow, steady, layered, like 3 storms dreaming together Cerberus. He stepped into an open clearing and saw the beast sleeping on a bed of ash and bones, each head twitching to its own rhythm. Its fur was blacker than black, its eyes shut, but its ears twitched. Arion didn't draw his weapon. He moved closer, knelt, and held out the necklace. Then he started humming softly. It was the song his mother sang to him as a child, the lullaby she sang at night, where the world felt too vast and too cruel. The middle head stirred, the left opened an amber eye, the right growled, then stopped. They listened, and in that silence, Arion clasped the necklace on. Cerberus exhaled. The door behind him opened not in anger, but respect. Arion had touched death, and death stepped aside. The path up to Olympus wasn't really a path. No signs, no guiding stars, just jagged rocks, biting cold wind, and whispers echoing from nowhere. Arion climbed not with certainty, but with instinct. His mortal hands bled. The sacred blood of the Lord burned. The mountain blocked him at every turn. Then he appeared. No roar, no flash of power, just silence. Hermes, the trickster, the messenger, the thief. He stood on a rocky ledge ahead, dressed like a traveler. Loose cloak, feather-tied sandals, eyes sharp, still like shattered glass. A crooked grin spread across his lips. "All right then," he said, flipping a coin between his fingers. "I thought you'd be taller." Arion kept climbing. "I know why you're here," Hermes said, strolling beside him without lifting a foot. "You want to steal fire back for mankind, sweet, noble, foolish." Arion stopped. "Then stop me," Hermes chuckled. "Stop you? Oh no, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to make sure you understand the deal. You're stepping into Olympus's heart, into the god's vault, into a story that's not yours." But Arion answered, "Here I am." That smile faded. "You're trying to restore a balance that broke for some reason." Hermes said, "Fire was once a gift, a mistake, and now the gods guard it like a dragon guards gold, not because it's precious, but because it's dangerous." Arion stared him down. Then they forgot what danger looked like. For the first time, Hermes's face twitched with discomfort. The air around them shifted. The coin in his hand vanished. His wings twitched. "You think you're Prometheus?" he said coldly. "But compared to him, you're nothing." "I'm not trying to be him," Arion replied. "I'm trying to finish what he started." Hermes stepped forward, pressed 2 fingers into Arion's chest. "And here's my gift." Pain rose up, not physical, It was deeper. A thread inside him twisted and turned. "The fire you seek," Hermes whispered, "will burn everything you have." Then he vanished. The mountain groaned, thunder rolled, a storm had begun. Not from rain, but from consequence, and Arion climbed higher, cursed, but unshaken. The curse sank into Arion's chest like frost in his lungs. At first, it was mild, tightening when he breathed. A slow burns under his skin, through the ravines like ancient voices. Angry at being disturbed, the higher he went, the less mortal the world became. The kids, shivering in the cold, told their parents they saw a man of light standing by the fire before it exploded. No one could prove a thing, but everyone told the same story. He walked until there was nowhere left to walk. His body had cracked and burned long ago, not from weakness, but transformation. What remained of Arian bones, blood, voice had become sparks, smoke, heat, and he gave it all up. His mother's forge was the last place touched, old and abandoned, the fire cold for decades, until one night. A traveler passing by swore he saw a boy hammering something glowing white on the anvil. Trees stopped growing, birds stopped singing, even the stars above seemed to be backing away. No paths here, only jagged rocks and sheer cliffs demanding sacrifice with every step. Arion bleeds. He slips. Once, he nearly fell to his death. But a sudden heat in his chest kept him standing, like that flame Hermes talked about, the one that would burn him alive. It's waking up. But he keeps climbing because every time he hesitates, he thinks of dying hearths, freezing villages, kids shivering in the dark. He thinks of his mom, blistered hands still trying to warm a world that's forgotten what warmth even means. But Olympus shows no mercy. Storm clouds gather above. Lightning dances down the slopes like frustrated gods pacing back and forth. Now he can feel their eyes watching, judging, waiting for him to fall. But it's not just the mountain fighting him. It's Olympus itself. He passes ancient ruins carved in stone, temples abandoned long ago for faith lost, altars cracked, gods forgotten, Athena's statue with gouged out eyes, Zeus's pillars eroded by time and silence. Arion realizes what no one dares to say. The gods aren't powerful anymore. They're scared that some mortal could steal fire without their permission. Someone not born in their palaces might carry the light that once defined Mount Olympus, and in that fear, they threw everything terrible at him. Ice, lightning, illusions, voices. But he climbed. With torn hands and a burning heart, he soared above the clouds and far off, lit not by the sun but by divine fire. He saw it, the hearth burning, waiting, but it wasn't what he expected. Mount Olympus isn't carved from marble or guarded by golden gods. No trumpets, no gates, no sacred thunder to welcome him, just silence and fire. It stands in the middle of a windless clearing on a black stone altar. The hearth looks ancient, older than language, made by hands, long forgotten. Inside, the eternal flame dances not red, not orange, but white, pure, blinding, alive. It doesn't flicker, it watches. Arion steps closer. The heat doesn't burn him. It seeps in like it recognizes something long lost. He holds his breath, skin tingling, the ember flame. Hermes, cursed in his heart, now beats like a second heartbeat, calling the flame like a lost brother. He reaches out in that moment. Time stops. He sees cities built from fire. He sees his mother's forge blazing in the freezing winter. He witnesses civilizations rising and falling, each built around fire, and each forgetting why it burns. He also sees the punishment, Prometheus chained to a rock, his liver eaten daily by vultures. The gods call it justice, but Irion sees it for what it really is, fear wearing a crown. He could turn back, let humanity freeze, forget the fire, forget him. But then he hears the wind whisper her name, Callista, and remembers who he is. He grabs the fire and it consumes him. Pain screams through his body, not burning, but rewriting. Bones crack and mend. Skin glows. Blood pulses wildly. He kneels. Silent screams as the fire floods every inch of him, burning the boy away, forging the firebringer. He no longer holds it. He becomes it. The hearth's flame flickers, fades, then cools, because the eternal flame is no longer tied to Olympus. It has chosen a new vessel. Irion collapses beside the empty stone altar. Smoke rises from his fingertips, but his eyes shine like dawn. He breathes hard, and with every breath, warmth spreads, riding the wind, down the mountain, toward the world below. He carried the fire, but not for himself and for everyone else. The Aryan didn't just climb Mount Olympus, he carried it with him. The moment that fire sparked inside him, the mountain gave up, the wind died down, the sky cleared. Even the rock beneath his feet seemed to shift, guiding him not out of respect, but recognition. He wasn't an intruder anymore. He was a torch. His body blazed with divine heat, not the kind that burns you to a crisp, more like the kind that wakes you up wherever he stepped. Frost melted away. Each breath calmed the cursed winds. The air smelled not of smoke, but of renewal, of rebirth. But he wasn't whole. His limbs trembled under the weight he carried. The eternal flame wasn't just fire, it was memory. He could feel every spark it ever ignited. The first campfire in a prehistoric cave, the torch that lit Athens, the forge that built Troy, and he felt the cost of it all. He'd seen cities burned in the name of gods, temples razed, wars fought fueled by fire and stolen ambition. The god's gift was never innocent, but this time he wouldn't use it as a weapon. He soared through clouds and silence, past shattered statues of gods once worshipped, now crumbling into sacred rot. He passed the cave where Cerberus once guarded the gate, but the beast was gone, as if death itself stepped aside for what the Aryan had become. He touched the underworld, and there, in a frozen village where hearths had long turned to ashes, people gathered around him, not in fear but in awe. He said nothing, just raised his hand, and a flame danced from his fingertips to the nearest hearth. It roared and roared again and again. A warm wave spread from house to house, town to town, through lands that forgot what it meant to gather round a fire without praying first. Irion burned. His hair shimmered like molten gold. His skin cracked like cooled obsidian. He was dying, but not weakening. He was becoming something else. He didn't steal the fire. He became the fire, and wherever it burned, the world whispered his name, not in worship, but in gratitude. No tomb was built for Irion, no statue carved, No hymn sung in temples, no procession, no funeral, no last battle to mark his passing, but he never disappeared. After the blaze rekindled, strange things started happening across the land. In distant villages untouched by travelers, fires lit themselves. Entire frozen forests bloomed overnight. Blacksmiths swore their forges heated faster. Shivering kids told their parents they saw a man of light standing by the fire before it flared up. Nobody could prove a thing, but everyone told the same story. He walked until there was nowhere left to step. His body cracked and burned long ago, not from weakness, but transformation. What remained of Irian bones? Blood. Voice became sparks, smoke, heat, and he let it all go. His mother's forge was the last place touched old, abandoned, cold flames for decades until one night. A passing traveler swore he saw a boy hammering something glowing white on the anvil. When he looked back, the forge was empty, but the fire blazed bright and hot, just like before. They say the gods felt it. The flame on Olympus trembled, stripped of its power, silent. But the gods didn't strike back. They didn't rage, because even they understood Arion didn't challenge them with war or pride. He reminded them of purpose, and the eternal flame, once hoarded by the gods, now flickers in every village, every city, every hut on the lonely mountain. When he looked again, the forge was empty, but the fire still burned hot and bright, just like before. They say the gods felt it. Olympus trembled in silence, stripped of power, but the gods didn't fight back. They weren't angry, because even they understood. Arion wasn't challenging them with war or pride. He reminded them of purpose and the eternal fire, once hoarded by the gods, now flickers in every village, every city, every lonely mountain hut. It lives in the warmth of soup shared by strangers, in candles lit by aching hands, in torches raised by rebels searching for light in the darkest places, and always they whisper the same name. The gods felt it too. Olympus trembled, stripped of its power, shaken in silence. But the gods did not strike back. They didn't rage, because even they understood. Arion wasn't challenging them with war or pride. He was reminding them of purpose and the eternal flame, once hoarded by the gods, now flickered in every village, every city, every lonely mountain hut. It lived in the warmth of soups shared between strangers, in candles lit by sorrowful hands, in torches raised by rebels seeking light in the darkest places, and always they whispered the same name, Arion. Some say when your fire goes out for no reason, it's him passing by. Others say if you listen closely to the crackle of the flames, you'll hear the rhythm of hammer on anvil, steady, patient, eternal, because Arion never dies. He becomes the warmth itself, not a god, not a hero, just a boy who gave up everything to help the world remember how to shine again. Not a god, not a hero, just a boy who gave up everything to help the world remember how to shine again. In Sparta, where boys learned to fight before they could talk, and honor was carved into their bones. The women were just as fierce. Among them was one whose name echoed through marble halls, like clashing steel, Leonthe, daughter of Commander Adristos. She was born during a blood-red eclipse. When omens screamed through the city, midwives whispered she came straight from Arion himself. By 12, she had beaten her brother in the wrestling ring. By 16, she led a hunting party into the Tagetus Mountains, returning with 3 wild boars tied behind her chariot. Leonthe wasn't just respected, people feared her. She strode through the Spartan square with a straight back and light steps. Men looked down, women looked on with a mix of envy and awe. She rarely spoke unless asked, and her words were like arrows never wasted. But there was something about her most overlooked. At night, when the armor came off, torches dimmed, and the world outside disappeared, Leonthe would stare at the stars, not with the challenge of a warrior, but with wonder. There was a softness buried deep inside her. One battle couldn't burn away, a longing not for marriage, not for conquest, but for something else, something Sparta's laws didn't even name: peace, magic, mystery. She never spoke of it. What she knew was this: every full moon, when the city slowed and the warriors slept, her body pulled her to the cliffs above the Eurotas River. She'd leave behind her spear, her battle fan, her fame, and become a lone woman under the stars. She thought, this world had to be bigger than Sparta, bigger than swords and pride. She felt it in her blood, like music she couldn't hear, but knew was playing somewhere. Then one night, under a silver sky carved by a blade, she saw it glide across a still forest pond, a swan, motionless, staring at her, moonlight rippling on its back, beautiful in a way no swan ever was before. And from that moment, Leonthe's life started to turn from blood and battle to something softer, stranger, much more dangerous. The hidden forest, untouched by Spartan boots, nestled between cliffs, whispered of something older than Sparta, older than Olympus itself. Trees bent in crescent shapes, branches low and sparkling under the moon, a shallow pond in the middle, smooth as glass, and on it a swan. Its feathers shimmered like woven starlight, neither white nor gray, but somewhere in between. It floated in silence, or smoke-like, gliding across still water. Its long neck curved gracefully, like a sculpture carved by divine hands, and its eyes, divine eyes, held no wildness, no fear, just pure awareness. Leonthe stood frozen at a tree's base. Her training demanded caution. Nothing in nature moves like this. No creature dares stand before a human so boldly. But the swan didn't flee. It looked at her calmly, expectantly. She stepped closer. It tilted its head. One more step. Closer. The pond's surface never rippled. She stood at the water's edge, heartbeat steady but alert, hand resting lightly on the dagger strapped to her thigh. The swan moved slowly, cautiously toward her. When it reached the shallow shore, it stopped and bowed its head gently. Leonthe knelt down. She had seen 1,000 things in her life: burning barracks, bloodied warriors screaming at the sky, newborn calves gasping for their first breath. The swan, its feathers shimmered like woven starlight, neither white nor gray, but somewhere in between. It drifted in the silence of smoke, gliding over water without a ripple. Its long neck curved gracefully, like it had been sculpted by a divine hand, and its eyes, those divine eyes, held no wild animal fear, just pure awareness. Leonthe stood frozen by the tree trunk. Her training demanded caution. Nothing in nature moves like this. No creature dares to face a human this boldly. But the swan didn't bolt. It looked at her calmly, almost expectantly. She stepped forward. It tilted its head. Another step closer. inching in. The lake's surface stayed unnervingly still. She stood at the water's edge, heart steady but alert, hand resting lightly on the dagger strapped to her thigh. The swan moved slowly, cautiously toward her. When it reached the shallow shore, it paused and bowed its head gently. Leonthe knelt down. She'd seen thousands of things in her life: burning military camps, bloodied warriors screaming to the heavens, newborn calves gasping for their first breath. But she'd never witnessed anything so silent, so utterly still. It was mesmerizing. She reached out. The swan didn't resist. Her fingertips brushed its feathers, warm, strangely warm, like its body was fueled by sunlight instead of blood. A rush swelled in her chest. Not fear, not excitement, but something ancient, something she didn't realize she'd missed until that moment connection. The swan, its body was burned by sunlight instead of blood. A rush swelled in her chest. Not fear, not excitement, but something older, something she hadn't realized she missed until that very moment connection. The swan blinked once and then turned away. Gliding back across the lake, Leonthe stayed kneeling, watching, clueless about what had just happened, but certain it wasn't an accident. On the next full moon night, she returned, and so did the swan, and the month after, and the month after that. No words, no promises, just presence, a ritual born from silence and gravity. When autumns arrived on the hills, Leonthe stopped wondering why. She only knew the swan would wait, and her world would never be the same again. Seasons changed. Leaves grew, fell, and grew back again. The war raged on far below the hills, but in that moonlit forest, time stood still. Now only the full moon mattered, only those nights. Leonthe used to measure her worth in battle scars, victories, and unquestioned orders. But now, something gentler guided her, something older than Spartan law. Every month, she returned to the forest, bearing gifts, fresh figs, soft linen, jewelry carved from olive wood. The swan never ate, never accepted presents, but Leonthe kept coming, pulled by an instinct she couldn't explain. The swan always waited. It met her at the water's edge, bowed its head gently, then glided beside her. Sometimes it circled around her. Sometimes it just stood there, warmth irradiating from it like a hidden sun. She started talking not like a soldier, but like a woman no one had ever heard before. She spoke about her father's coldness, about victories that never filled the emptiness inside her chest, about nights staring at the sky, wondering if there was more to life than spears and dirt. The swan said nothing but listened. She could feel it. Its silence wasn't emptiness. It was attention, the kind of kindness humans never give, the kind no commander, suitor, or friend ever showed her. Over time, she stopped feeling alone. She braided her hair before every visit, smoothed her cloak, sat beside the swan for hours, her shoulder touching its wing, speaking little but feeling more than she ever had in Spartan palaces or battlefields. And so far, the swan never ran away, never aged, never changed. She should have been scared. There were stories of gods turning into animals to lure mortals to ruin. Stories of punishments for those who loved the divine. But Leonthe no longer believed those tales. She believed in how Her hand fit perfectly along the curve of the swan's neck, in the way it bowed when she whispered into the night, in how it seemed to be waiting for her, needing her. No words, no promises, but in their silence, something ancient took root. And even though she never said it aloud, not even to herself, Leonthe knew what it was: love. The swan wasn't born of earth. Its wings once stretched across the sky. Its fingers played the lyre that made the sun rise. Its name had been whispered in temples, carved in marble, shouted in song: Apollo, god of light, music, prophecy, now silent, feathered, bound. Long before Leonthe was born, Apollo had sinned against Olympus. He challenged Zeus, not with sword or rebellion, but with truth. He spoke out against his father's punishments, against cruelty passed down from the throne to the world, against the silence that power demands. So Zeus didn't kill him. He destroyed him, a curse cast in rage, more damning than justice. Apollo was stripped of form, voice, divinity, and trapped in the body of a swan, not to teach him humility. Power demands. So Zeus didn't kill him. He destroyed him, a curse cast in fury, more damning than justice. Apollo was stripped of his form, voice, divinity, else locked into the body of a swan, not to teach him humility, but to remind him you may shine like the sun, but darkness still cages you. The curse was even crueler. There was a catch. If any mortal discovered his true identity, the transformation would become permanent. So Apollo waited years, centuries, lifetimes, drifting on lakes, hiding under stars, watching humanity forget his temples, forget his hymns, watching the world grow colder as gods withdrew, until Leonthe appeared. Her presence cracked something open inside him, something buried so deep even Olympus forgot it existed. Hope he never wanted to be seen, never wanted to stick around, but she keeps coming back, and her voice, the way she talks to him in the empty field, is the only thing that reignites the fire inside him. She's no nun, no fairy, and definitely not some chosen prophet. She's a warrior with hands meant for weapons, a woman hardened by loss and trained to feel nothing at all, yet she still sees him. She treats him not like a symbol or a threat, but like something sacred, something worth waiting for. He doesn't dare speak, doesn't dare reveal his name, but with a tilt of his head and the silence of his body, he answers every question she never even asks, and slowly, unbelievably, he loves her back in Sparta. Loneliness is respected, but doesn't last forever. Leonthe's absence doesn't go unnoticed. Every full moon, she sneaks out of the barracks, the training grounds, escaping the watchful eyes of commanders and kin. At first, no one questions her. She's Leonthe, untouchable, unshakable, a warrior with loyalty carved into every scar. But Sparta thrives on order, discipline, and love, especially secret love, which is about as rare as a polite Spartan in a city built on control. Whispers start. She wanders too much. She's quiet in council. She trains, but her strikes lack their usual bite. Yeah, that's right. Leonthe has changed. Her moves are still sharp, but no longer cruel. Her voice lost its rasp, and there's something softer in her eyes. Some nights, she even smiles at herself like she's clutching a secret, Even the gods couldn't swipe. Her father notices first Commander Adrastos, a man with a face that never smiles, whose daughter is supposed to lead men, not chase feelings. He calls her in one night, supposedly to discuss strategy, but when the room is empty, he says plainly what keeps you awake at night. Leonthe says nothing. His voice drops. Don't forget who you are, but she already knows, at least the version Sparta made her. What the city built in stone, the swan touched with water, and Leonthe feels she doesn't want to return to her old self. Still, Sparta watches. Once, a patrol followed her outside the walls, tracking her footsteps toward the cliffs. They lost her near the olive groves. She's too good to be tracked, but it's enough. Enough to spark suspicion. The priests whisper omens, that the moon carries voices, that the lakes beyond Sparta move strangely, that a female warrior vanishes every full moon night. They fear it's madness or worse. A god, Leonthe, knows the walls are closing in, that eyes are learning to look where they once looked away. The silence that used to be her strength now makes her weak, but she keeps going, keeps finding him, and in the forest where moonlight touches feathers, she forgets the noise of Sparta, forgetting the rules, forgetting the danger. Only one thing matters now, not being seen, because if the world finds out what she knows inside, both of them will be destroyed. That night, the moon hung heavy, low, round, glowing gold like a dying flame. Leonthe stood in her room, fingers trembling over her armor, unable to fasten the last clasp. Something had changed. She'd felt it for days, a quiet tremble beneath her feet, like the ground knew something she didn't. The swan looked different from the last time, restless, wary, its feathers bristling as the wind shifted. It circled her twice before. That night the moon hung heavy, low, a blazing gold orb like a flame about to die. Leonthe stood in the room, fingers trembling over her armor, unable to fasten the last clasp. Something had changed. She'd felt it for days, a quiet trembling under her feet, like the earth knew something she didn't. The swan looked different this time, restless, more alert, its feathers bristling when the wind shifted. It circled her twice before, settling beside her, its warmth sharp instead of gentle. That night, she couldn't sleep, and when she finally drifted off, she dreamed illusions, standing in a silver grove, hands dusted with golden powder. A statue appeared before her, half-human, half-swan, wings stiff as stone, face serene but soulless. She reached out, calling a name she didn't realize she knew: Apollo. The statue cracked, and a voice echoed not from the sky, but from the next day. Leonthe left Sparta earlier than usual, a sharp pain in her chest, growing worse with every step. She didn't take her usual path. Her feet led her deeper into hills, through trees she'd never passed, into bushes with no memories. There, beneath layers of moss and spring curtains, she found an ancient, cracked altar carved with a single unmistakable word: peeling gold Apollo. Her breath hitched. Suddenly, everything clicked. The warmth of the swan, its listening eyes, the dreams, the curse etched in its bones. Why it always showed up at full moon. He wasn't just enchanted, he was a god. Oh God, she'd broken something. She staggered back, feathers dropping behind her. The swan followed silently, as always. But its quiet no longer comforted her. It watched sadly, gently, like it already knew, like the truth had arrived. And so did they end. The forest was no longer silent. The air hummed slow and deep, like an ancient beast waking up. Moonlight shimmered on the lake's surface. Trees bowed, witnessing the hush of a secret centuries old. Leonthe stood frozen before the altar, the name Apollo hammered in her mind like a spear into stone. She turned slowly, as if that could undo the truth, but it was too late. The swan stayed put. No grace, no glide, just watching. Its feathers no longer sparkled, dimming like a flame about to die. Leonthe stepped forward, lips parted, unsure what to say, or if she could say anything at all. "I know," she whispered. The wind died down. A single feather floated from the swan's back, drifting silently before turning to dust the instant it touched the altar. And then the change began. The swan's neck arched, not graceful, but in pain, its body trembled. Feathers burst into golden streams and light. Wings curved into arms. Webbed feet split into toes, digging into the earth where the swan once stood. Now kneeling was a man naked, radiant, shattered Apollo. His hair glittered like sunrise skies. His skin glowed faintly, like embers beneath marble, but his eyes clouded with sorrow, with the inevitable. Leonthe stepped back, hand over mouth. She had loved him in silence, and now that silence was unbearable. He tried to speak, but the curse wasn't fully gone. His voice cracked like thunder in an ancient storm with no name. "Finally," he whispered, almost like the wind, "you must not know. That was the only rule." She knelt beside him, tears streaming down her warrior face like rivers over mountain stone. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. He smiled once, then the smile of a god. Not joy, but farewell. "I know." And with that, the ground beneath them trembled. A silent earthquake, a merciless divine sentence passed. His light dimmed, skin hardened, limbs stiffened. Apollo turned to stone, and Leonthe could only watch love turn legend. The moment the name was spoken, the curse kicked in. The light, wings folding into arms, webbed feet digging into the earth where the swan once stood. Now kneeling there was a man, naked, radiant, broken Apollo. His hair glittered like dawn's sky. His skin glowed faintly, like embers beneath marble, but his eyes clouded with sorrow, with inevitability. Leonthe stepped back, raising her hand to her mouth. She'd loved him in silence, and now that silence was unbearable, he tried to speak, but the curse wasn't fully lifted yet. His voice cracked like thunder in an ancient storm with no name. "Finally," he whispered, almost just a breath. "You're not allowed to know. That was the one rule." She knelt beside him, tears streaming down her warrior's face like rivers carving mountain stone. "I didn't mean to," she whispered beside him. Tears streamed down the warrior's face like a river carving through mountain stone. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. He just smiled once, the smile of a god, not a happy smile, but a goodbye. "I know." And with that, the earth beneath them shook, a silent earthquake. A divine sentence passed without mercy. His light dimmed, his skin hardened, limbs stiffened. Apollo turned to stone, and Leonthe could only watch love become legend. The moment the name was spoken, the curse began to take hold. Apollo's body, once soft and godly, hardened inch by inch. The glow beneath his skin faded like cold metal. His golden hair lost its shine, turning into marble strands as Zeus's final punishment kicked into gear. The end. No mercy. No second chances. Leonthe held his hand still warm, still trembling, but she could feel the stone creeping like frost beneath his skin. His fingers squeezed hers one last time before going completely still. She shook her head. No, no, this can't be how it ends. But the curse didn't care. It had waited centuries in silence, patient and ruthless. Apollo's chest heaved once more, then stopped. His half-curved wings behind him froze mid-back. His knees buckled from sorrow, stiff as stone. His face stayed handsome, still gentle, but lost somewhere between love and pain. His eyes were open, but saw nothing. Then came silence, a silence deeper than any battlefield, deeper than the moment before a charge. This wasn't the silence of peace, but the silence of loss, of something sacred shattered. Leonthe knelt there, forehead pressed against his cold hand. A hand that once cradled stars was now just stone. Tears traced down his marble fingers, dripping to the ground, slow and steady like a funeral march. The forest faded into the mist. Even the moon, usually bright and watchful, hid behind clouds. No lightning, no. God's appeared punishment had been served. Zeus had spoken. The swan flew one last time, and Apollo, the god of light, was now just a silent statue, forever frozen at the final truth. Leonthe stayed long after the transformation ended, arms wrapped tight around what was left. She didn't scream. She didn't curse the heavens. No Spartan heard her cries. No warrior bore witness, only the wind, the trees, and the stone statue of a god who once loved her, not with thunder and fire, but with silence. Now Leonthe was silent too, and never returned to Sparta. She left her armor by the altar, drew her sword, letting her fierce name vanish like smoke over a lake. The woman who once stood tall among kings now knelt silently beside a statue that would never move again. The forest became her world. Every full moon, she came back, never missing a single visit. She brought no offerings, no incense, no prayers, just herself and a memory. She sat beside Apollo's statue, fingers tracing the cold stone hand she once held. Sometimes she spoke, sometimes she hummed a song he never heard, but somehow felt like theirs. Other times, she just stared at the water, silent. The villagers started whispering. They said a woman haunted the hills, wandering under moonlight with eyes like distant stars. Some said she'd gone mad. Others claimed she was chosen. But no one dared disturb her. Years passed. Winters came and went. Empires changed. The gods stayed silent. But Leonthe remained, older but never weak. Her strength was stubborn, not like a soldier's, but like an olive tree's roots, gripping the same patch of earth year after year, storm after storm, and the statue stayed too. Apollo stood in the middle, wings folded behind his back, eyes fixed on the spot where Leonthe always sat, frozen in marble. forever, untouched by time. Some visitors swear the stone feels warm if you touch it, and if you place your hand on his chest, you might sense something faint like a heartbeat in a dream. Then, on the final full moon, Leonthe arrived. She sat longer than usual, gently resting her head on his shoulder, never moving again. When the villagers came weeks later, they found her there, peaceful, eyes closed, lips curved in a soft smile. Beside her, the Apollo statue glimmered faintly, as if lit from within. No one touched it. They didn't build temples or shrines. But the legend grew, and now on quiet full moon nights, some say the swan returns to the lake, not to be seen, but to remember. Melanion wasn't born in a palace or temple incense. The boy came into the world beneath a willow tree during a storm that split the sky in two. His mother, a midwife's daughter, wrapped him in linen as thunder roared across the hills. Birds scattered, rain danced wild. But the child didn't cry. The boy hummed from the moment he could walk. Music followed him. The streams whispered melodies as he knelt to drink. Leaves rustled rhythmically as he passed. He didn't need guidance. The sounds belonged. About him, by age 10, the kid could mimic any bird call and turn it into a song. By 16, he played the role of the charming lyre so well that even battle-hardened warriors had to stop and listen. He sang about rivers, lost brothers, pre-war fields, songs that made people's eyes fill with tears they didn't even know they had. Folks called him a gift, a miracle, a child of divine breath. He never claimed any of it. Melanion wandered from village to village, sharing his music with no need for money or pride. His voice soothed fevers. His strings softened even the coldest hearts. He once played for a dying child, hearing his lullaby. The kid smiled and drifted off as if it were a dream. But not everyone who listened was mortal. One spring evening, as he sat by a shimmering river, strumming a tune about starlight, the air around him suddenly changed. The wind slowed, the water stilled, even the frogs zipped it. Then they arrived, the muses, 9 of them, stepping lightly from behind the world's veil, bathed in light and sound, each carrying their own essence, history, tragedy, dance, epic poetry, and more. Their eyes weren't kind or cruel, just deeply knowing. They listened, and then, to Melanion's surprise, they sang back, 9 voices in perfect harmony, older than language itself. Melanion closed his eyes and without a second thought joined their gaze. His voice wasn't theirs, it evolved them. When the last note faded into silence, even the stars seemed closer. One muse, Kali the oldest and strictest, touched his forehead. "You're no ordinary man," she said. "You are a vessel." And so began the legend of Melanion, a poet whose voice shook the very sky. From that night on, Melanion was no longer just a talented mortal. People took notice, treasured him, whispered about him. The muses had chosen him in the quiet folds of Mount Hell, where few dared to tread. They invited him into their sacred circle, there, beneath ancient trees and a clear sky untouched by earthly ambition. Melanion learned not from lectures, but from experience. Kali, muse of epic tales, taught him to turn stories into sound. Cleo whispered histories of nations into his ear as he slept. Terpsora danced barefoot over leaves while he played beside her, his fingers learning the rhythm of wind and body. Ute placed her flute in his palm and simply said, "Listen." And he did. He absorbed not just melodies, but truths, the kind living between words, truths mortals rarely notice but feel deeply, begins the silence before storms, in the ache of longing, in a child's breath as snow falls for the first time. The muses gave him not only power, but vision, and they asked for only one thing in return: to sing for them. They meant mortals, the lost, tired, proud, and broken, those who needed reminding that beauty still exists even in pain. That song could be a soothing balm or a razor's edge. At first, Melanion obeyed. He performed in city squares and quiet fields, playing music for kings and beggars alike. His songs healed broken hearts, sparked revolutions, mended father-child bonds, and turned grudges into uneasy peace. But as his talent grew, something else slipped in ambition. He started chasing sounds the muses never taught, notes no god had ever touched. In the stillest nights, he often wrote alone, sketching passages beyond language, a song that could bend time, silence wines, and turn tears to ice. The final song, he told no one, not even the muses, because part of him no longer wanted to share the sacred, wanted to surpass it, and the muses, always watchful, noticed the change not in his fingers, but in his eyes. How he, Stone, the final song, he told no one, not even the muses, because some part of him no longer wanted to share his sacred gift, wanted to surpass it, and the muses, always watchful, noticed the change not in his fingers, but in his eyes, how he looked beyond them, as if fate owed him more than admiration, and far away, fate stirred, because no mortal can walk beside the divine forever without paying a price. Melanion withdrew from this world. He left behind applause, pleas, gifts from kings, and the worship of cities. He stopped performing publicly, stopped teaching, even stopped talking to the muses. Some thought he was sick, others claimed he was dead, but the truth, he'd retreated to the shady slopes of Mount Helicon, deeper than any mere mortal had dared, where only the echoes of ancient gods bounced around. There, in a crystal-lined cave that sang when light hit it, he began composing his final song. It came to him piece by piece, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in thunderclaps, sometimes the silence was so deep it scared him stiff. He didn't write it down. He saw it as a secret hidden between the folds of reality. The melody refused to stop. It shifted with his breath, twisted to the beat of his heart. This wasn't a song for a crowd. It was truth in sound. He heard the birth of stars in its opening note, felt empires crumble in its fall. Not sad, not happy, just facts. He worked for months, maybe years. Time warped weirdly inside that cave. He ate little, slept only when the music allowed. He'd cry sometimes, then laugh, as if the song lived inside his soul, not his hands. And when it was done, the world had changed. Birds froze mid-flight. Trees leaned toward the windless mountain. Streams fell silent. The sky held its breath. Far away, in marble halls on Olympus, the gods turned their heads. Even fate, who never looks away from her weaving, paused. The fabric whispered, a trembling thread. Lysis frowned. Atropos, who never hesitates with her scissors, set them down. They listened. The song demanded no worship. It didn't beg for love. It just revealed everything. When the last note faded, even the cave held its silence, as if the world knew repeating it would be a crime. The gods waited. The muses waited. They hoped Melanion would return to share this miracle with the world. But he didn't. He hid it. And in doing so, he created a different kind of music, a music of silence and consequence. When Melanion stepped out of that cave, the world seemed smaller. The once vast sky now looked pale next to the echo of the song still humming in his bones. People flocked to greet him, musicians, poets, even priests, begging to hear what he had written, to feel the power that shook the heavens. But Melanion said nothing. They asked again. He smiled weakly. Not yet. Only the muses noticed the change. They came to him at dusk, stepping out like breath from a liar's mouth. Their cloaks gleamed with inspiration, but their eyes warned. Erato said softly, sadly, "You were chosen to carry beauty," but Cleo added that beauty isn't meant to be buried. "You have to sing that song," Calliope whispered. Melanion bowed his head. "I won't cheapen it." They gasped like he'd slapped them. "You think mortals aren't worthy? You think you're the only guardian?" Terpsy asked, voice shaking. He looked into their eyes not with anger, but with a colder, possessive stare. The silence between them was winter itself. "Then you're no longer one of us," Calliope said. "Not because you made something beyond us, but because you hoard it." He said nothing, and they vanished. Still, the gods waited. Even Zeus, who rarely cares about human drama, paused his thunderbolts to listen. Even Hades tilted his head in the depths. They waited for a note, a whisper, a sound. Nothing happened. Melanion kept the song locked inside. No writing, no sharing. He called it sacred. But sacred things sealed too long turn bitter. He performed other works. They were still beautiful. The crowd cried, cheered, but he and the divine both knew something was missing. Worse, something had been stolen. Nothing happened. Melanion kept that song locked inside, not to be written down, recorded, or shared. He called it sacred, but sacred things, when sealed away too long, start to turn sour. He performed other works. They were still beautiful. The audience cried. The crowd cheered. But he knew, and the divine knew, something was missing. Worse, something had been stolen. The song that could move fate, bend time, and touch gods was buried under his pride. He told himself he would protect it, but the muses, watching from afar, saw the truth. He had chained the sacred to his ego, and gods, who endure madness, war, and worship without blinking, would not tolerate theft. Then one night, the wind went silent, the stars hushed, and a curse began, not with fire, but with memory. The curse whispered softly, no thunder, no wrath from Olympus, just a dream. Melanion lay beneath the vast sky, soaking in the silence he once treasured. Sleep gently pulled him into darkness, and there, the song waited the final song. It returned, clearer, richer, perfect beyond belief. He heard notes he'd never written, melodies he'd never imagined. It carried him through the stars, into the ocean, unraveling the fabric of meaning. He wept with joy, with awe, with surrender. And then the sorrow faded too. Not faded away, not erased. No memories, no messages, no names. The tune he wrote with his soul, felt in his bones, vanished like dawn's mist. At first, he thought it was a cruel joke by sleep. He grabbed the lyre and tried to recall even one note. Nothing. He strummed frantically, out of tune, desperate. Nothing at all. That night, he went to bed early, heart pounding, and the song played again, brighter than ever. He sang along in his dream, tears falling, fingers dancing in the light. It felt amazing. He could remember it in the dream, but again, at dawn's first light. Melanian lit candles all night and scribbled notes in the dark. He begged his mind to hold on to a phrase, a rhythm, a single image, but no matter how hard he tried, it slipped away again, and again he stopped playing, refused to perform. Crowds thinned, friends left. His house grew dusty and cold. But who cared? Now he had an obsession, remember the song. The muses watched from afar, sad. Otterpay said he was gifted a treasure and chose to lock it away. Now only he could hear it, Polyhymnia said, and never remember again. Cleo whispered, "It's not revenge, it's balance." Melanian would hear this song every night forever, but it only lived in dreams. Every sunrise, it slipped through his cracked hands like water. He would never stop chasing it, never stop hoping, and over time, hope would turn mad. Because what torments a poet more than forgetting the greatest song he ever knew and knowing it still sings without him, Melanian stopped counting nights. They blended into an endless loop of joy and loss every night. He sank into dreams where the final song embraced him like a lover returned from war, and every dawn he woke alone, screaming, crying miserably. At first, he tried to break the curse. He hired scribes to sleep beside him, begged seers to extract scraps of memory from his mind. He sang in front of mirrors, hoping his own voice would reveal a hidden memory. Nothing worked, and he began to grow weary. He stopped eating. His cloak hung loose on an empty shell. His fingers trembled as he reached for his lyre, that is, the instrument he once cradled like a child. Strings snapped under his shaking hands. He didn't fix them. He didn't need them anymore, because in sleep, the music still played. It became his only purpose, the only place he felt whole, and waking up was punishment. He cursed the sun, smashed windows, locked himself in a room without light. But the song stuck around in the morning. When he appeared, he no longer looked like a poet. He had wild eyes, was gaunt, and his once beautiful voice echoed after nights of desperate humming. He wandered village to village, like a beggar not for money, but for memory. "Have you heard it?" he asked strangers. The song had no beginning and no end. Did you hear it in your sleep at first? People hated him, then feared him. Some threw stones, others. The beggar wasn't after money, but memories. Heard the news, he'd ask strangers. The song had no intro and no ending either. Did you catch that in your sleep at first? Folks hated him, then they feared him. Some threw stones, others ran for the hills. He started singing random, crazy snippets on the street, snatches of melody with no rhyme or reason. To everyone else, meaningless, but to him, they were clues, keys, shattered pieces of a broken mirror he almost put back together, only to have it slip away every time. He'd laugh at failure, then cry, then laugh again, and every night the song returned, sparkling, whole, just out of reach. The muses watched, not angry, only mournful. He had once been something else, their best vessel. Now he was like a cracked vase, only spilling when no one was looking, and as he spiraled down, the song he hoarded became the thing that broke him, not with fire, not with rage, but with silence. Millennium was no longer alive in this world. His body went through the motions, sure, but his mind was elsewhere, stuck between dreams and daylight, past and present. A song only he could hear, and only when it was way too late to hold on. He walked barefoot through cities that once treated him like royalty. Kids who once sat at his feet now ran from his shadow. His name was once praised, but now a warning, don't end up like Melanian. He slept wherever he could, under trees, in abandoned chapels, sometimes at the doorstep of houses whose caretakers once begged for his presence. He no longer wanted to eat, just a place to rest, just a dream. The curse never failed. Every night he fell asleep with shaky hope, and the song returned whole, vivid, a perfect ghost. Every morning, he'd forget it again. The cruelty wasn't in the silence. It was in the memory of sound. He remembered hearing something divine, something of monumental meaning, but he forgot why. He started talking to the darkness, to trees, to stars. Sometimes he sang to strangers and begged them to sing it back, convinced the tune was hiding in their throats. When he thought a kid hummed it passing by, he followed that family through 2 villages before collapsing, begging the child to sing it one more time, but that sound was something else, just ordinary noise. He cried for hours, and every night the song still played, teasing, embracing, sacred. He tried humming it in his dreams, tried waking up in the middle of the melody, but the curse was clever. He couldn't move in the dream. He couldn't record it, write it down, or carry it, only listen. And when he woke up, emptiness. Some people who saw him said he still hummed in his sleep, that if you pressed your ear close to his mouth at midnight, you could hear a kind of music unlike any other, but only then, only in the dark. The muses stopped coming, the gods stopped watching, and Melanian, once the world's voice, now wandered like an echo of a song the world forgot. And he couldn't forget either. Melanian grew thin like twilight, his skin, once kissed by golden light, now pale and paper thin. His voice, what little was left, was the hoarse whisper of years spent roaming. He no longer searched for food as a shelter, or even the song. He just walked. One night, he reached a cliff overlooking the sea, quiet there. No towns, no roads, no prying eyes, just wind, waves, and stars slowly rising in the deep blue sky. He curled up against a rock, sea breeze messing up what was left of his hair. He didn't cry, he didn't sing, he just closed his eyes, and the dream came again. But this time, something was different. No delays, no fog to wade through, no struggling to hear. The final song was there from the start, full and clear. But it wasn't just sound, it was a place, a presence, a world built from music. Melanion stood inside it, barefoot on strings curved like grass, stars twinkling in rhythm above. The sky was a symphony. The wind sang along, the melody, and he didn't just hear it, he was part of it. His voice blended smoothly into the song, steady, no tremble. It was never forgotten. It soared. He saw every note he'd lost. Every verse made him ache, but now he understood. The song, it was never forgotten. It soared. He saw every note he'd lost. Each line of the song made him ache, but now he understood. The song was never really gone. It grew without him. Everything was beyond what his hands could hold. He wasn't its owner. He was just a witness. And in that final dream, no sadness, no shame, no punishment, only release. When the sun rose, Melanion didn't move. A gentle breeze drifted around him, like carrying his last breath. A shepherd passing the cliff found him, peaceful, hands folded on his chest, as if embracing a no scrolls, no recordings, but above him, up in that coastal sky, seagulls flew in weird formations, almost dancing to a tune only they could hear, and the sea, just then, sang not with words, not with a melody, but with something older than both, something Melanion had finally become. Melanion was buried beneath a lonely olive tree near the cliff where he took his last nap. No priest showed up, no crowd gathered, just the shepherd who found him and a handful of villagers who still remembered the tale, the faint echo of a poet who once made gods pause mid-breath. No statues, just silence. But silence has its own way of amplifying truth. Over the years, strange stories spread far and wide. Travelers claim if you walk past that cliff on a new moon night, you can catch a tune carried on the wind, brief, fleeting, heartbreakingly beautiful, not a full song, just a single note enough to make you stop dead in your tracks. Kids start dreaming of songs they never heard before. Musicians wake up at night with tears on their cheeks, no clue why. And sometimes, when a poet sits alone at dusk, no audience in sight, a melody magically forms under their fingers. Something not theirs, something perfect. They never remember it with regret. Astrologers say nothing. They don't curse any other poet. They don't demand the song back because they know what Melanion became. Not a warning, not a hero, but a vessel turned legend. A soul punished not by cruelty, but by rejection, and saved not by sharing, but by surrender. The final song was never written. This play never staged in any arena or temple. It's not in scrolls or scriptures, but it lives in the quiet moments between sleep and wakefulness. In the silence before the performer strums the first chord, like the sea sounds different when you're grieving. Melanion's song became part of the world, not to be remembered, but to be felt. A whisper in your bones, a wordless melody, and anyone who feels it, even for a moment, will never forget the silence that follows. They say if you stand alone, on the right cliff, on the right night, unseen, with a soft breeze, you might hear a sound that doesn't belong to this world, just a shard, just a breath, and maybe, if you listen close enough, you'll finally understand why Melanion never let go. They say if you stand alone, on the right cliff, on the right night, unseen, with a soft breeze, you can hear a sound that doesn't belong to this world, just a shard, just a breath, and maybe if you listen close enough, you'll finally understand why Melania never gave up on it.